All right, welcome back, everybody, to Hired Labs Coding Bootcamp. We're in week 4. We're working on front-end design and development, more development than design. This is day 8. And those of you that made it on time, I guess, Michael, for today, appreciate you. I understand a lot of folks are just following along on videos and can't make it to live. That's totally cool, too. There's good questions coming in Discord. Just note on the comms, I'll break it out into a thread so that everyone can still read it. Please keep asking questions there directly, or shoot me a direct message if you're really uncomfortable doing it that way. But I like the engagement. I'm glad y'all are building it. Practice is the most important thing. Me and Michael were talking before the class started today that a real common feeling he was expressing that he doesn't feel that he can sit down and produce any of this that we've gone through, and we're really going at a good clip. And I really want to reiterate for everybody that it's not the intention here to remember any of this and memorize any of it. It's to understand where things go and how to find it, and understand the general concepts of what you're trying to do and where to find the documentation for it to get the specific pieces that you need for any particular task, because every task is going to be different. So this is trying to cover the basic spread of things that you're going to need to address when you approach one of these tasks, and what you should focus on in the course, hopefully, is developing the discipline of tracking down the documentation, reading and understanding what's going on, and copy and pasting if you need to. But don't hold yourself to the expectation of producing this off the top of your head right away. That's not going to be a realistic expectation. And practice is what gets to that. If you want to get to that point, just keep practicing these things, and you'll get there eventually. Another quick one, a note that I want to say before we dive into anything else that came up last time, a question about hosting, and we're talking about Python Anywhere, and it's like it is a hosting thing. I don't think I've clarified really in this course that I should, what exactly we are accessing. So if you want to move to another platform, you know what to look for exactly. So right now we're accessing a virtual machine instance that's running Linux, right? So you can usually find a virtual machine access on other hosting services like Google Cloud Platform. I'm sure Amazon's got something similar to that. And it'll operate in maybe different ways, but the concepts that we're applying here with Python Anywhere, with being able to go directly and connect with the operating system level, in our case, Linux, through the Bash console, that's the kind of thing you can find in other hosting environments if you want to go and check those out for other projects outside of this course, whatever you like. Um, cool. So, with that, I want to talk about what frameworks are in JavaScript, front end stuff, where it all fits together. And I want to start and kind of end with this slide. This is the only real slide we've got for today. We're going to be mostly hands on and diving through our own files and structures. But this meme is kind of one of my favorites because it just cracks me up. But it's also highlighting that all these frameworks that we're going to talk about that provide tools for us to do front end things like we were doing last time with colors and the schemes and layouts and CSS, all these frameworks that we're going to talk about and use, we're going to use one today. It's not actually listed here, but all these pictures are front end frameworks. They're all JavaScript and CSS. In some way, that's what they're doing. So if you understand what CSS is and what it's doing, and you understand what JavaScript is and what it's doing, where it goes, you could plug these things in and use the parts of them. This little A thing is Angular. This little, nuclear thing looking is React, and this is Vue, this is V, and this is Svelte, Svelte, SVELTE. Should probably learn how to pronounce that, but these are all really popular ones. We're going to use one that's not listed here called Bootstrap. It's older. It's invented by Twitter a long time ago, but it's free, really easy to use. We're going to drop it into our code and show how these tools, these front end frameworks, give us the ability to make our sites a lot better looking, really faster than if we write all these things ourselves. And we're also going to do some JavaScript directly to show where it fits in, how we could use it in a kind of non-contrived manner. Any questions about any of those things before we dive in and get going? For either of the Michaels that are online, it's two Michaels online, which is great.
Once again, just a question for me.
Sure.
Uh, JavaScript, usually, I've kind of been exposed to it. It's more of a kind of a setup type item. Do I understand that correctly?
I'm not sure what you mean by setup. What do you mean by setup?
It kind of sets up your page or your
Okay,
URL as to
I get you.
what you want in it, and what direction you want it to go into.
I get you. Yeah. So it can do a lot of different things, and and one of the things that is so it is, I guess, the language of the web. I'll say that is written very much for web interactions, and so it makes websites interesting, moving around. A lot of the interactions that you have with a website will be facilitated by JavaScript. So like the example that we're going to use today is we're going to have those little pop-ups that come up and confirm that you want to do an action that you took on a website, right? So you click a button and a little pop-up comes up and says, are you sure you want to do that? You hit OK or cancel or whatever. That's JavaScript. So that's not the only use of JavaScript. There's all kinds of uses for it. But what we're going to talk about is where it fits in and kind of what sorts of things it does. But generally speaking, it's the dynamics of a website. So the HTML is going to be your layout. It's the hypertext markup language. Markup languages generally are just like the layout on a page of where things are, the headings, the space relation to each other. Your CSS, the style sheets, is going to be your colors and your fonts, and then JavaScript is going to be kind of the movement and the interactive pieces that make it more interesting generally. Does that help a little bit?
Helps extremely a lot. Thank you very much.
Nice, nice, cool. Any other questions?
So they're coming.
Yeah. All right. Keep them coming. That's excellent. That is exactly why we're here. So, with that, the slides are not coming anymore. We're going to get out of the slides and we are going to hop over and take a look at some stuff in our Python anywhere. So let's do that. We can get out of this. And before we go into our console and start doing any kind of work of any variety, let's go through and look at our web page and kind of catch up on where we were and what we did most recently. So we go to Python anywhere. I'm just going to open this up here. I don't need to have my control panel for the web thing open today, I don't think. And if you recall, we have still our basic website that doesn't look amazing, but we did put in our custom CSS and we have some basic functionality for navigation. This isn't looking amazing. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up some more ways to make this look good. But as a refresher, how we got these things in here, now we can go back into our file system. And if you recall, we had start with a look at what we wrote. So we go to our My Site. And if you remember, we made a to-do. No, we didn't make to-dos yet. I'm sorry. We made our top level. This is what we're doing today. I was thinking about what we're doing today. We did our static and then styles and then our main.style CSS. And we ended with moving our style tags from our HTML page in the base.html to, hey, no worries, Alex. Thanks for coming by. To this external CSS page that's at a different directory. That's in the static directory, right? So we ended here and we wrote these IDs and classes. Anybody actually remember which is which? What is this hash tag right here? What is that one? It's a hash, but it's this is for an ID. And then the period is the class. So classes in CSS are marked by periods, and these are IDs. What's the difference? What's the difference between an ID and a class? Again, well, they're both for reference, Alex, in answer to your question. They're referencing something. So we take these and we put them into our HTML to reference back to here and affect these attributes that we want, like the color to change and things like that. So it is referencing here, but the ID and the class references work a little bit differently. What's the main difference? Does anybody remember? Again, your stunned silence is very reassuring. No, so okay, so I'll let you know. All right, right on your stump, right? So an ID is applied to one thing. Think of it as like your driver's license. That's just yours, your identification. If somebody asks you for ID, it's something that's officially just you, as opposed to a whole class, which is could be like veterans is a class, right? We are a class of people that you can classify as veterans. That's the difference here. The ID is for one thing and one thing only. You're going to use it for one thing. You're not going to apply it to multiple things on your page, whereas a class can be used several times. So that's the main difference between an ID and a class. Everybody tracking that? Nice. Okay. So we did that quick thing. And now we also, before we got this to work, since it's separate, we were in our bash console and we ran collect static, right? So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to start doing some stuff in our bash console. We're going to do a lot more in this today, I think, than maybe even we have in past classes, but it's going to be great. So what I'm going to start by doing We're in our home directory. And I'm going to start the way we start out every day. What's the first thing that we do every time we start?
We get into my site by setting this thing up with source bin and activate.
Yes, absolutely. So you source the name of your virtual environment, which in my case is VM. I named it after the package we use to remind us that's what it's called. That's an arbitrary name. And then bin, activate. And again, remember to use tab complete so you know you're in the right place. If you're not in the right place, just hit CD to get home. And we know we're in there because we have this name of our virtual environment in parentheses. Make sure you have that before you get going or things might break. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change directories into our top level project directory of my site. Let's clear that up. So now we are here, and let's take a look at what our project directory structure looks like overall. We're going to use the tree command, which if it's saved in your history, you should just be able to hit up and see it there. Mine doesn't save sometimes, so I'm going to rewrite it each time, and also just for getting the habit of writing it. I'm going to use the A flag so I can see where my .env file is. This is for all, so it shows hidden directories and files. The capital I to ignore whatever pattern I give it as a string. We'll do underscore pycache, double underscore, and then this or as a vertical line to do other things. So if other patterns that match, so we're going to skip anything else that's JavaScript or CSS or image, and that's going to keep our tree a reasonable size. So now, what I want to highlight is this section of it. I'll go all the way to the top just to make sure that we're clear on where we are. So we're in our top level my site directory. We could have that printed out here in place of this if we just put this directory name after the tree command, and it would print the whole thing out here, which is cool. But I'm keeping this dot here, this period, to remind us that that is the current working directory. That's where we started. That's where we do this call. It's the top of our root project. Keep in mind that's how you call the directory you're in sometimes. So when we ran collect static, what we did, and I want to make sure I highlight this today and that we're somewhat clear on it because it is a slippery concept. We're going to do it again today. I want to address it now, see if there are questions. And when we do it again later, there may be questions again. But as an explanation, in our static directory, we made a static directory, then a styles subdirectory, and then in that main CSS styles our main styles.css file, we put in our actual styles. When we ran collect static, that whole styles directory with its main-styles.css file were copied into our static main. In our Python setting, or our settings.py file, we have, let's go look at it. Or actually, while I'm getting there, who remembers what these settings are? Like, what is static main and what is static? What are these referenced as in our settings.py as I go to find it? Who remembers what these are set as, the name of the constant that's in there? Anybody?
On a blank.
Drawing a blank. All right, cool. So we're going to settings.py. We'll have a look. Scrolling all the way down to our static file settings. They're going to be towards the bottom. Almost got to scroll all the way to the bottom in this one. So our static URL comes standard, and this again is the URL that's going to be up here. It's not really relevant. It comes standard in the Django framework, so we don't set that one, but we set these two. So our static root, that's static main, and then static files dirs, that's static. So in the context of our project and seeing this concretely played out, that means that the static directory is the one that we work in when we make changes. If we go and make any changes to our CSS, we make the changes here, we run collect static, and Django copies it to here, to main static. And then when we go to our site, when we push it to the server, and a client requests something from our server, it's going to pull from just this static main directory. And only that static main directory. It will not take anything out of the static directory. So if you make another change here and don't do collect static, that change won't be reflected in this file, which we should never be changing directly. Everybody following this? At least marginally?
Well, to understand, our CSS and JavaScript is going to be linked or developed within static main.
Yes, it's going to be all of your static files. Whatever static files you add to this entire project are going to get pushed into this when you do collect static. And we're going to do it again today with some static files that are specific to our to-do application and talk a little more about why this structure, like how it works at a project level. But yeah, that's I can think of it.
And reading through the code, this is where it's linked back, as you said, to Django, and then that's where the Django is going to look for it.
Yep, exactly. So these are the settings. The static root is our static main. So we talk about the static root, it's this one. And that's the one that we don't ever make edits to. And it's the one that is populated by collect static is the static root. And then static directory as a static just itself is the one that collect static goes and copies from. So cool. All right. Now let's get into our framework stuff. So this is where we were at the end of the last one, and we had our site looking like this. And now we're going to make it look a lot better with some very simple additions and changes. And to do that, we are going to go into our free coding resources. There's a link down here. I believe it's in the reference documentation section. Got some good stuff on by these guys, Mozilla. Really recommend looking through that for general front end, HTTP, JavaScript. These guys do Firefox. A lot of really, really good JavaScript stuff, just general web development things. But the front end framework we're going to use and implement is called Bootstrap. So I'm going to go to this link here that's in the documentation. And hopefully it still works like it always did. I forgot to check this before class today. So here it is. This is the Bootstrap homepage. And this once again is a dated front end package. It's not, the newest. This is pretty old, but it is used. People still use it. It's a really good place to start. It's very simple, lightweight, and pretty nice. This is also a good, example of what documentation is like when you go to use these sorts of things. It's going to be laid out similarly. So let's talk about what it is we're looking for and what it is we're looking at, so we can find the right pieces quickly and reliably. Because I said that's the most important thing, is to be able to find stuff, know where to plug it in, and use it. So on this page, when you start scrolling down, it's got a little pitch. It's like, hey, build this. It's their little quippy thing because they're a company and they're doing what they do. But this, well, I mean, it's more like a project, but that's all right. Don't worry about it. So this right here is one way that you can get it, and it'll be usually listed with this sort of NPM thing. And then there's just read the docs. I'm gonna scroll down. We're gonna come back up to that, but I want to scroll down to right here where it says install via package manager. Now, where have we heard this term package manager before? Does this ring any bells for anybody? Where have we talked about a package manager in the context of our project? Anybody? Okay. So in Python, we used a package manager to install Django, which is a package, and then Environ, right? The Django-Environ package. And we used pip, to install those packages, right? So that's Python's package manager. And when you go to look at stuff on the web, a lot of times you're going to see things for NPM. This is very commonly used package manager if you're doing backend stuff or you're doing all your development, most of your development in JavaScript. So this is a JavaScript-based framework that can be all kinds of things. Yeah, there's lots of packages. So like the manager is really the thing to remember, is that pip is the Python manager of packages. NPM is like the JavaScript manager of packages. Gem is for another language, Ruby, that we're not going to talk about, but it's very common. It's out there a lot. So you'll see these things, NPM and Gem, and this is for installing it locally, right? So I don't want to get hung up on these learning new package managers, and I also don't want you to get overwhelmed by it. So looking at it, yeah, packages. Alex, your question in the chat, they are something like templates. Yes, they do some specific thing, like that environment that we used that helps us interact with the environment so that we can read our environment variable file. So it's specifically written piece of software that does just that function within the Python ecosystem, specifically for Django. We use a version specifically for Django, but all those things are predefined, narrowly focused pieces of software that do a specific thing that you can import and use through some kind of package manager like pip, or again, NPM if you're using JavaScript or something like that. Cool. Nice. I'm glad we cleared that up. And seriously, keep throwing the questions out, because there's a lot of this terminology that makes it difficult when you get started, because you come to one of these pages and you're like, well, what do I want to do? I have this install with a package manager. I don't even really know. I kind of know what that is, but what are we talking about? So I want to make sure that these things are really clear on what it is we're talking about, what we're using, and how we're using them, right? What we're going to do, though, we're not going to mess with these package managers. None of this is specifically Python. We're doing this in Python. We're not going to flip over to JavaScript and start doing NPM. We're going to do this doing via, there we go, the word's right in front of me, I can't spit it out. We're going to do this via CDN. And does anybody know what CDN is? what that stands for and what it is. So we got folks with varied amounts of tech background in all sorts of things. No? All right. So it stands for Content Delivery Network. And the idea with a CDN is that, again, keeping in mind that all things are just files in directories, right? So all of this bootstrap that we're talking about here, it's just files and directories. Those packages that we were talking about, Django environment, those are files and directories somewhere. So when we're installing them or downloading them, whatever it is, we're copying those files someplace to our local directory to access them, or we're accessing them over a network of some sort. So we're just getting to the path that those files are located. And that's what a package is. That's what a lot of things are. They may have slightly different names, but at all times, it's files in directories. So a CDN, a content delivery network, is a place where servers have the files and directories in them. And when you go through your browser and ask for one of these things, this network basically decides which server is closest to you and gives you a file from that server that you're looking for. So it's a way to serve files in varying places. So let's say you're in, I don't know, China somewhere, and you try to access it, you'll get files from like Taiwan or something like that, wherever the server farm is. I'm out here in California. It's probably in Oregon, maybe LA. There's like a place where all the servers physically are located. And depending on where you ask for things through your browser is where you get served those files from which server based on this content delivery network. Is that making sense? Nice. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to take, there's two just blanks of code here. This top one is the one that we're going to use directly. So I'm going to copy that. Just want to just copy the clipboard. So I'm just going to put that on my clipboard and use it. We're going to go talk about some more stuff before we use it, but I'm going to copy that so I have it. This bottom one is for the JavaScript part of it. The top part is just CSS. That's all we're going to do. We're going to write JavaScript on our own, but this can easily be implemented very similarly to what we're going to do with CSS. You just have to put this little piece of code into your file the way we're going to do with the CSS, and I'll show you where. But so I copied that, but I'm going to go back up to this read the docs part, and I'm going to go to their get started with Bootstrap to show where that line that I just copied, where it goes in context, and kind of talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go put it in our file and get it running. So right here into the quick start in point 1, it says to get going, we're gonna have to create an index.html. I promised that was an internet standard. It is. Here it is. Here's proof. I didn't come in here and hack this site and try to back up my own point. It's what people call it. The other thing is you'll notice it says include the meta viewport tag, which you'll recall we added. And I said this is going to be something we're going to need. This is going to help our sites be responsive to different screen sizes and set the initial size to the size of the browser device, or the device that you have accessed through your browser is going to be the default size that it starts with. And this is what Bootstrap needs us to have. So we have that. And if you look at this template that they have here, this boilerplate HTML, it's very, very similar to what we started with. There's a couple of differences. One of them being this little character set call and meta tag of UTF-8. Who remembers what UTF-8 is? Lots of quizzes today. I didn't tell you that was going to happen, but who remembers UTF-8 and what it stands for or what it does? Even if you don't remember what it stands for, just what it does.
Language type, right?
Okay, expand on that. Yeah, it is, but in what way?
Like Unicode?
Yeah. So it's that covers basically, so the difference here between ASCII, which is just English characters, and UTF-8, which is all the other characters, emojis, Cyrillic, Chinese characters, that kind of stuff. So that's what UTF-8 is. And so you can explicitly add this in your HTML docs because that's kind of the modern internet language. It's going to be in UTF-8. But you don't have to. But again, this is all real standard boilerplate stuff. So if you ever, again, are you wanted some boilerplate HTML, you can come get it for Bootstrap. So step 2 is include Bootstrap CSS and JS. So here is that same thing with that line of code that I copied. We're going to go put it in our own file, but I just want to show you again where it is. It's right here underneath our title in the head tag. So it's a link tag. It's got some information in it. We'll talk about what that is once we paste it into our own file. But I want to call out here that the script tag, if you're doing the JSS, is not in the head, it's in the body. And we'll do that too when we write our own JavaScript, but this is something I'm going to reiterate a couple of times. The way that this is read, the sequential control structure of reading top to bottom, left to right, is relevant for these files. The order in which we put things on the page is going to be relevant to how that information is loaded by the browser. We're not going to get very deeply into how that works. There's different approaches to it. There's document object models. There's different things, cool theories to know. And I definitely encourage you to go look into those deeply, or as deep as you want to. For our purposes, though, it's really just important to remember that you need to put things where they belong in relation to each other and on the right place on the page. And sometimes if something breaks, you need to look at how it's being loaded and remember to read from top to bottom, left to right, like the computer does, and see if something is maybe interfering or being skipped because it's already something else has already been called. And we'll play around with that a little bit. I just wanted to highlight it here that these are two different places that they're going to go. But let's go over and make that a little bit clearer on how that works. So we've copied this one line of code. If you didn't do it before, it's just this link line right here. So everything above the closing head tag. Yeah, don't worry, chicken wings time, man. Get them chicken wings. But you gotta get them hands on. No, I'm joking. Yeah, if you're just listening now and get hands on later, that's cool. As long as you're doing the practice, it's all good where you are. All
That's
right,
what
so
we put in the clipboard, right?
yeah, so I copied the clipboard.
Okay.
It's the same. It's that same line, and so if you didn't copy it before on that homepage, you can copy it here. But I should have already copied it, and I'm going to take it back to when you go to our files, and we're going to put this into our base.html. So we go to our project level templates. So we're in my site, templates, base.html. And this is where our HTML boilerplate is. And if you recall, we have our own custom CSS here on what's, for me, line 8. And I apparently don't have closing bracket there. That's not good. So let me close up my angle bracket real quick. And then I'm going to paste in that thing that I copied. And let's go through this a little bit more in detail because, I encourage you to find stuff on the internet and bring it into your code. And I'm going to show you the value of doing that. But don't just blindly do it. Read what you have. Understand it as best you can. Understand what it does. Understand what it's supposed to do. Look for malicious things. All that kind of stuff. So let's go through the parts of this and make sure we understand what we're doing, what we just put into our code base here. So the first part of this link tag, which is again the same thing that we use for our own style sheet, is an href, and we've used these before with our own internal a tag links. There's a hypertext reference or hyperlink reference. I'm sorry, and it has what you would expect in a link, right? So this is HTTPS location of some sort. Here's the CDN, and then it's got what we've seen a couple of times already with the URL pattern or the Linux file system pattern that points to a CSS file, just like ours was. Except we have this min thing. You'll see this a lot. This means that it's been minified. It's been made small, so it's one line across the top. I mentioned this before that the indentation matters in Python. It does not matter in these front-end languages like CSS and JavaScript. In HTML, so they can be the indentation is for human readability. And so a lot of these things, especially CSS and JavaScript, will be minified to save some space and be smaller, be read faster, that kind of thing. So it's not for human readability. This is for if you're not expecting to open it up and read it yourself, which we're not. And this tells us how it's related to the sheet that we're in. We used this again before. This is the standard to say this is related to the sheet that we are in, the base.html, as a style sheet. This next tag, the integrity tag, is a security feature using this SHA-384 method of hashing. So there's a big hash that they use to say, whoop, 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 whoop. I mean, select all that, start moving around that crazy. So this big hash right here is linked to the file, the CSS file. And the idea being that if somebody has made a change to this file after this hash was made, the file should be counted as being tampered with. So this is showing that the file has integrity as a way to check for integrity. And we're not going to get into this, not cryptology or cryptography or how we make these. It is interesting how the hashing is done and all that stuff and how these things are made secure, but that's just what this feature is. And that's something we need to know. And the last piece is cross origin tag, and it's set to anonymous. And this is basically doing, it's again, another somewhat security thing. It's telling the internet basically that the request for this is part of this project. It's not some malicious injection of some other kind. It's intentionally put here and should be considered a part of the project. That is a legitimate source of information. So that's what these pieces are doing. Any questions about these? Right. Nice. So now that we have that, now that we've got our our style in here, we can start doing some things by just applying classes and different calls. And so like to inform us on what we can do now, I'm going to go back to the documentation and show sort of what's available to us because it doesn't seem anything monumentous that we've done. We just pasted this one link in here. So now what we could do is we could go back to our documentation and say on this left-hand side, there's a whole huge list of tons of stuff you can do. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to say forms, right? Let's say I want to do form controls. So there's this email address input. They have this example. And if I scroll down below the example, here's the HTML code for this example. It's the same code, right? So if you want this to appear on your page, this is the code you would write for it. And what I'm looking for is this class. It says form label. Now that kind of thing is going to help us look like this. It's going to be this piece. It's going to be the parts and pieces that we need to look like this is generally put in with classes. So let's say I want to do accordion items, right? So this ability here, we're going to look for classes, the accordion class. I'm assuming we need JavaScript for this one. We're not going to be doing accordion classes. But the idea here is that we're going to use classes to get this sort of thing from Bootstrap. We can't use IDs because sometimes this is, but again, this is probably not going to come from Bootstrap. This is probably going to be to target our specific item. But that's for a later discussion. We're going to be using classes for the most part today. And this again will be part of the design phase to decide what you're going to do to make your site look better. We're generally going to make this look better because it looks terrible. And let's just assume that we've gone through the design. We're not going to go through all the steps of that. But we're going to like push the contents a little bit more to the middle, make it responsive, change the color scheme so it's a little bit less abrasive. And we're going to use that using Bootstrap. So let's go back in to our base.html and finish making the changes that we need to make to affect those. So once we have this here, this link ready to go, I'm going to take out all these other class and ID things that we did before because we don't need this. We don't need this ID. Just leave just the nav. And then this A class was button, green background. I'm going to take out our custom CSS. Well, actually, I'm going to leave that one. I'm going to leave our custom CSS for now. And the body class, I'll leave that nav naked. But the body class, I'm going to add a new class using our Bootstrap. And I'm going to add two classes. One is going to be changing the background to a dark color. And the other is going to change the text for some sort of contrast to a light color. So I just quite literally typed in bg-dark space text-light as a string for the class attribute of my body tag. For me is on line 12. And so what I'm going to do is when I save this, that's all I've done. I've just added a couple of class calls. I'm going to reload the server-side code. And hopefully that didn't break everything. And it did not break everything. We still have this is the index there, but you see the text format's a little bit different. The screen, the background color changed, and our buttons changed. So they disappear until I hover over them, and they no longer have those colors on them. So this is one of the things that a framework can do for us. We use just a simple class call, and it changed all those things about our site really fast. But we'll also notice, so we got a couple of things we got to fix, right? So there's, we can't deal with that. That's not good. But also, we're not getting, I want to talk about this a little bit. We're not getting this green background anymore, right? So let's try moving this up. So I'm going to move this all the way. I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to move it above our custom CSS call. And I'm going to see if that changes things. I'm going to save this. I'm going to reload it. And what we'll try to play with here a little bit is the order in which these things are called. Because they're both called, but we didn't get one that way. So let's try reloading and refreshing. Okay, so when I run it that way, now we have both. We have both our custom CSS and we have our Bootstrap CSS because there's our green backgrounds applied to our buttons, but now they do something different when we hover over them. They're rounded looking, right? We didn't make that shape, and our fonts are still different. So the key takeaway here. Oh, we got a question in the chat. Nice, really cool. Yeah, it is really cool. It's like this is fun. I hate front end development, but this stuff is fun. So um, the key takeaway here is the order in which you put things on the page. The top to bottom, left to right sequential control structure that we've been talking about is relevant to how these things load. So if you are not seeing something on your page that you expect to see or you want to see, double check the order in which things are loaded and they're called in your page, right? Top to bottom, left to right. Now, there are a couple approaches we could go to deal with this sort of thing. We could comment this out, which again, we're going to use comments a couple of times today. Real fast trick in whatever language you're writing. If you forget how to write comments in Python, it was a hash symbol, but now we're not in Python. And you're like, oh man, what's the comment for HTML? Just go to the line you want to comment out, or highlight all the lines you want to comment out. Hold down your control button, your control key, and hit slash, and it'll comment out that line in a text. In most every text editor you could be using, Python anywhere included. So here's an HTML comment. So if you don't want to use that line of code, this is one way of doing it. I'm gonna keep this going because commented code should probably be removed. It's dead code, so we should take it out. Another way to stop this behavior, because we don't want to use those custom backgrounds anymore, is just take these classes off. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take these classes off, so we don't have those goofy green backgrounds. Those again, we're just demonstrating how we could do custom CSS. And then again, we can leave this here. We could take it out entirely. We're not going to use our own custom CSS anymore. We're gonna rely on Bootstrap to do the rest of the things that we're going to do. Color layout wise is going to be all Bootstrap, because again, this is not a designer front end course. It's all about how to do these things and where they go. So, any questions about that? It's very simple so far, but I want to make sure we pause for questions. No? All right.
More stuff, that's for sure.
Nice. All right. So we're going to move on to another really, really, really handy thing that helps us delineate the space. Remember the concept of breaking apart the whole space into smaller subspaces. One of the great tools for that is a div element, is what it's called. So we're going to add this div element, and it's going to be right inside of our body. So I'm going to go at the end of our body tag, the opening body tag, hit enter. So down line 14 for me. Do an open angle bracket, and I'm going to put in div. And then I'm going to close it. We're going to do some stuff inside the div, but it's all good. So these are short for, yeah, exactly, div it up. So they're short for division. You're going to see these all over the place when you look at other people's websites and you look at HTML a lot. So I'm going to take this end tag. I'm going to copy it or cut it out and put it underneath this Django end block right before my body closing tag. So it has all the content from our body inside of it. And then I'm going to highlight all this stuff up to the nav bar, down to the end block, and I'm going to move it over one indentation to make it more human readable by holding down control and hitting the closing square bracket button. You can move things in blocks right and left using the square brackets holding down control. And this is something, if you haven't noticed, you could do that in like Gmail and stuff like that too, Google Docs. So it's a handy hotkey. Again, this is for human readability. This is this nesting and moving things in like this. So it's easier for us to tell what level of things is. It's just easier to follow the file and the flow and what pieces go with what. And then you can start using these collapse things as well to kind of see what is contained in your div, for example, and collapse all the rows that are inside of it, what's contained in your nav element and what isn't, right? To make sure that you're containing the right things inside of your structure on your HTML and whatever other layout you're using, like XML or something like that. All right, so the div element. This is going to be something that not really all that visible usually, but we're gonna use it to apply styles to different sections of our page. And what we're gonna do here is we want to move our content. If you look at it now, it's all stuffed up against the left hand corner up here in the top. We don't really want that. That's kind of gross looking. So we're gonna keep going to the bash console for some reason. We'll use that later. I don't know why I keep doing that. All right, so we're going to adjust this to be a little bit more responsive And absolutely, I see the note in there. I am not offended by you not asking questions. No worries. Do it how you are comfortable. So, what we're going to do is we're going to use, again, Bootstrap's built in stuff to add a class to this. And this class is going to be a container. It's very common to use these things. And we're also going to add this nav bar to make it just a little. Well, actually, let's go see what the container did first. I'm not doing anything with the nav bar yet. I'm leaving the nav bar alone. Let's go see what the container is. Just the container. So all I've did is add the word container. I'm going to reload the server-side code. I've saved my base.html. So I've added container as a class to my div, which, and again, the div is wrapped around all of the content that I want to be visible on my site. So let's go in here, back to my site. I'll refresh. And as you can see, we've now got to where the custom CSS I took off is gone. So now those green buttons have disappeared, but everything moved away from the edge of the site, the edge of the page a little bit. And that's helpful. But we can also look at, I'm going to inspect. I'm going to right click and hit inspect to inspect my site. And again, this is the developer tools that come in standard in all browsers. So there's hotkeys and ways to get to this. Try to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. Hopefully that does make it easier to see. But what I want to highlight here is that we can make this responsive now. So I clicked in the upper right-hand corner, this little button says dimensions, and you could pick for refresh. We talked about this before, but this is different screen sizes to choose that are static screen sizes. Responsive is something that you can move, grab the bar and move it around. And so that container class gave us this ability to see the text now bounces into the middle as the screen gets smaller, and it stays in that kind of relatively same position of that upper left-hand spot, but not quite at the edge. That's responsiveness. And you can see that this up here in the upper left next to where it says dimension responsive, there's a 715 right now. That's pixels. That's number of pixels across. And then this is down. Down is hardly ever is relevant, but sometimes it is. Usually you're talking about the width of things when you talk about responsiveness, right? So as the width changes, you'll see that right around here, around 780, 77 something, 770, you see that it makes a jump. That's what's called a breakpoint in CSS. So at this point, something is happening. Now, if you want to know what's happening, we can look over here on the right-hand side on the bottom, right? So this is the top we talked about last time where it has our HTML layout, and there's all kinds of cool stuff in here. As you see, as I hover over these elements, it highlights them for me, gives me some more information, which is really, really helpful. And we'll talk about those a little bit more soon. But the styles down here is what I want to highlight, that we're talking about CSS. This is the CSS, and this is all the CSS for all those different things. You see what happens, all this, we could write this ourselves if you wanted to. You could look all this up and just write in CSS all this stuff. Or you could use Bootstrap to just write the word container and have it do all these things. Where's the part that's actually moving? Here's the dot container part, right? And it's going to give us the ability to move these things. I'm trying to get part that shows us changing the size. Oh, here's the breakpoints. So 768, yeah, I was right. 768 pixels is a breakpoint. So we could go in manually and write this, dash BS breakpoint. We could do this whole thing in CSS if we wanted to. But all we got to do is write the word container as a class and get the same functionality, because this is what Bootstrap does. And so this is what a framework does. Is somebody wrote this CSS, and so that you don't have to, and you just get the functionality of it. All you got to do is plug in the framework and reference it through a class. Questions about that? That all making sense? All right. So we are going to do some more changes to this, make it a little bit better looking. And one of those things is going to be the nav bar, right? We can't see anything up here. The buttons are invisible. So let's fix that and do some changes back in our HTML. This time the nav bar element. So we're going to add classes again using our handy front end framework. And we're going to add a nav bar dash nav, and this Again, we're not going to dig into exactly what these mean. This is something that you would decide during your design phase. In our thorough design phase, we decided that navbar.nav or dash nav is the best one. And we're going to do a background that is secondary to set it apart from the rest of the background. So that it's, we're having like a different little navigation bar at the top. And let's see how that makes it look. So I've saved it. I'm going to hit reload on the server side. Again, I've just added two classes to our navigation bar, the navbar-nav, and then bg-secondary. So go back to the server side and refresh this, and now we can see that we have a couple of different buttons. Here, let me close this. We'll inspect it here again. But now we have these two buttons stretched out across the top. They're no longer invisible. They have different color in the background, different color when they're not hovered over, but they still have the hover ability. They still function the same way. We can still move back and forth between our home and about pages. And when I inspect, this also shows the cool thing of those containers. Because see, those buttons are in there and they stretch out to, if I highlight this little arrow with the dashed box around it, I can pick an element on the page. And it'll kind of hover over that for me, right? So you see this is our body, the div right there. So there's our container. There's our div.container right here. I'm highlighting it now. It's that got the orange part out there is the margin on the outside, paddings on the inside. Again, these things you could set manually. But you can see that the buttons go all the way to the edge, just like the text does. So they're lined up to the very edges of our container. And what happens is they also get that responsiveness. So you see the buttons themselves will stay lined up just like the text will. And now all of our content in our body is going to be automatically responsive and automatically contained to that. We don't have to spend any time trying to line up our buttons and our text. We just dropped them into a container. And then we made the nav bar look like a nav bar and changed the color on it. And now our site looks significantly better than when we started. Right? Even though I'm zoomed exceptionally close into it, it still looks a lot better than when we started. Cool. It worked. Any questions about that? Glad to see that it's working so far. Questions, comments, anybody stuck? All right. So I think actually what I want to do with the next part is talk about embedding code. And I forgot to pull up the examples. I'm going to grab it on my drive real quick. It's in the, I believe it's in our day 8 documentation, the front end framework. Hopefully there should be a link that I can grab out of here to just grab some content as an example. And so I'm going to use, yeah, there's a link right here. So I'm going to use this embedded content from a site called Giphy where you can get GIFs. And if anybody pronounced that with a soft G, they're just flat out wrong. And I'll give you my address. You can come and fight me over it. But we're going to go to the site and grab some stuff. And you don't have to go here if you don't want to. It's just a place to grab something that's going to make the site look pretty. Again, the idea here is to show how we can do what's called embedding code and embedding content into it. So the examples right here, I could just copy that, but I'm going to go through the steps of actually going and grabbing something. So I'm going to pick this up, and there's all kinds of goofiness on this thing. But let's say, I don't know, like code or something, and see what we got. And now we got all these cool matrixy looking things. This kind of thing I'm looking for, right? Let's say I want something that looks like this. So what I want to look for is this little button that has embed. So it says embed in a couple of brackets, right? So we see our HTML brackets, there are angle brackets up here, and it says embed underneath. That's the button I'm looking for. And there will be an embed version of that in a lot of places. And it's going to come up with should be HTML. So it says embed this GIF. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to embed the GIF. And so it says responsive is set to off by default. And if we look at the code that's in here, it comes with this iframe, which has the link in an href, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. We'll talk about what that is soon. But we know that we want our site to be responsive. It already is responsive. So we want this content to be responsive as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this to on. And you'll notice what happens when I do that. I can flip it back and forth to see the change. But when I flip it to on, it goes from just having an iframe to using a div. So here's a div again. These again, I'm not making up the prevalence of these things. They do exist out in the world. And I'm not cherry picking examples to show it. But what we're going to do is we're going to copy this whole thing. So I'm going to hit this copy code button. And we're just going to put it into our site someplace that's going to make it look better. So the way that I want to use this is if we think about our site, I want the about page and the home page to be differentiated in some way. And people can come to the about page first. So I want to put it in here to make it look, I want the GIF to go here so it looks cool on this page. So I'm going to go into my index.html. Remember, that's the home. It's index, and we call it index by sort of by convention. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to add this. First of all, this is the index. We can change that to something sexier if you like. But right now we're going to leave it. And we're just going to add this below what we already have. So I've copied this whole div thing by hitting copy code from here. And then I'm in my index, and I'm just going to add underneath my H1 element on, for me, line 5. I'm just going to paste that whole one line in. And once again, I've mentioned all these things go with one single line. HTML doesn't care if it's all stuck together like this. It reads it just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this more human readable so we can pick apart these pieces and see what's going on. So I'm going to find the end closing tags and move it down into separate lines. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but this is going to make it easier for us to read as humans. So the first is the end of my div closing tags. So you have some inline styles that dictate the width and height and all those sorts of things. And the beginning of the iframe tag. And that's what, if we hadn't selected responsive, this would have been the beginning of what we copied, right? So the iframe, not going to get into details of that, but it's basically like HTML within HTML. It's a context within a context kind of thing. So that's how we're going to get the picture that pops up like that. So what I'm going to do is go to the end of my iframe. There's nothing in it. There's no content inside of our iframe. But I'm going to go ahead and go down anyway, just so that I have my two tags there, so I can see where the end tag is, and I'm aware of there being an end tag, and we're aware of where things are, right? And then here's my div end tag. I'll go ahead and put that down. Move my iframe over. Again, this is all just for human readability. We don't have to be doing this for the code to run. I just want to make it so that we can more easily pick apart the pieces that are here and see what is nested in what. And I may have moved my nesting off a little weird. But here we go. All right. A little bit more human readable. So this is all the code that we copied from Giphy to get that div, to get that thing on our site. So we got this div, has some inline styles. Here's an iframe with a source, which we're going to use shortly when we hook up our own JavaScript and whatnot. But then some more inline styles and some more other information that's coming on. There's a custom class in here, which probably does some stuff that we should look into because there's going to be more involved in this than what we have here, but we'll talk about that in a second. We also see there's an H or an A tag, I'm sorry, with the familiar structure we've talked about before with an href that has the text of via Giphy in here included. So I'm going to hit save. And again, you didn't have to break this down into separate lines if you didn't want to. Copying and pasting it from wherever and putting in one line is fine. It'll work as one line. And I'm going to reload server-side code. Go over here and refresh. Then I should have that embedded GIF. And so now the site looks way more interesting. And then since we know how this works and how we can edit it, we can go down here and say, oh, I don't like this little thing down here that says via Giphy. So we can go back to our index and say, you know what, I'm going to take out this whole P tag, which is short for paragraph. So any text that you have on your page, you can wrap it in these and then style them appropriately. So I just remove this, take that all the way out, save, reload, take a second again. Then when I go back to my site, here, I'll close this up because we don't need GIF anymore. When I go back to my site and I refresh it here, now that link is gone. But you can still see when I hover over this, it's still going to link back to Giphy. It's going to link back to the same spot like it did before. So if I inspect this, imagine there's probably some other stuff going on in here. There's probably some JavaScript assigned to it as well. So be aware that when you take stuff from the internet, and I encourage you to do it, be aware that there may be things connected to it, especially when it's like context in context, like an iframe, that's not readily apparent in the piece of code that you copied, right? It may be connecting in other ways, so just take it from trusted sources as best you can. Any questions about embedding information? Like the matrix. All right. That's it. Like I said before, no more questions about that now. If you ask me, I won't answer. So let's shift gears into JavaScript if there's no questions. So this is front-end frameworks. This is, again, the power of them is that you could just do very little, couple of things, and this is embedding stuff. Again, now we know how to use it, where to put it. We can make a site go from the terrible that it looked when we started with just a little bit of effort, make it look a heck of a lot better. So what we're going to do now is we're going to show where JavaScript fits into this whole picture, use a little bit of it in a non-contrived way, right? So when I say non-contrived, say this is a real use case for JavaScript. It's a realistic way you might want to plug it into any project you might do. And so we're going to think ahead to when we build our actual to-do application and think about when we have an application running, a user of that application will interact with it in certain ways because it's a to-do list. So think about what you do with a to-do list, right? At some point, you might want to delete an item. So what we're going to do is give them the users, a way to confirm that they want to actually delete something using JavaScript. So it's going to be a little pop-up window that comes up and says, hey, are you sure you want to delete that? And we can write that JavaScript now before we have any tasks, and we can just attach it to one of the buttons we already have, like our About button, to test it out. So that's what we're going to do. And then we'll use it later once we have our tasks, and we'll plug it into the rest of the Django once we write that piece. But this is going to show us how JavaScript fits in, where it works, and that it's not that different from Python. If you know Python, you can switch over to JavaScript fairly easily. So let's do it. Enough talk. Let's start writing some code. So we're going to go back to our base.html. And this time we're going to go down to the body tag. I mentioned before that, the styles and stuff go in the head. Scripts, like JavaScript, are going to go in the body, right? So we do not forget this. This is very important. Then we're going to put the script tag at the very top, or I'm sorry, right before our closing, actually right before the closing body tag. It doesn't have to be in the div. So the div is a visual thing. We don't need our scripts to be in there. So outside of the div, but inside of the body, we're going to do a script tag. Hit enter because we're going to actually write our JavaScript directly into this. So just like when we did style tag up in the head and we wrote CSS directly, I am now going to be writing in JavaScript. So this is no longer HTML. This is JavaScript that it expects. So it will break and yell at us and complain if we write in something other than JavaScript or a script that it recognizes. JavaScript is the one we're going to use though. So before we start writing any actual code, let's just sketch out what it is that we want to do, right? So let's think through what functions does a confirmation button do, right? So it's going to, user's going to press a button. Actually, before I dive into this conceptual stepping through, something that's really helpful for this is called a user story. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of user stories before. Is that a concept anyone's familiar with from a design class you've taken before, maybe, or in your daily work even?
Well, user story kind of maps out the user's steps and expectations as they're going through, um, in this case, a web page.
Right, right, right. And so the way it's useful for design tasks is it's a structured way to frame the specific piece that you're trying to build. So you would start it with a statement of, as a user, I want to, and then you fill in that sentence with what the user wants to do, and then you try to lay out the steps of what would it take to do that thing, and then you make those steps, right? So in our case, as a user, I want to delete I want to press a button on the page that deletes a task, and then I want to have confirmation. I want that button pressed to be not executed immediately on deleting, to be interrupted, and for the computer to ask me if I'm sure that I want to delete that thing. And then I want to click, I do want to delete that thing, confirm that I want to delete it, and then release the initial request that I sent to delete and execute that initial button press. So that's what we want to do as a user, right? We want to press the button, the thing gets deleted. So we can sketch this out, and a common way to do it is to write it again as comments. We use comments a lot. So the first step that we discussed there is stop the default behavior. And you see that I'm writing this in plain text because now we're in JavaScript, right? And so let's say, JavaScript, I don't remember how to do the comments in JavaScript. I want this to be a comment. So I just wrote the line. I'm still on the line. I'm going to hit Control and slash. And there you go. It's 2 slashes. So in JavaScript, comments are with 2 slashes. So we're going to stop the default behavior of the button, right? The delete button that, again, we're going to assign later. But the button will be pressed. We'll stop that default behavior. Then we want to confirm with the user that they actually wanted to do that. They want to delete the thing. And then if they do, right? So if confirmed, we want to execute the default behavior. I'm sorry. Let's do that. Execute default behavior. because this doesn't have to be delete. This doesn't have to be confirmation. This doesn't have to be all those things. This is a process by which we can apply the same thing to this confirmation process to other things other than delete, any number of things, right? So a button is pressed that has some sort of default behavior. We want to stop that and then confirm with the user real quick that they actually want to do that thing. If they do, allow that to happen. If they don't, then do nothing. That's the idea. So this is our general sketch. And what we're going to do is start writing in JavaScript now outside of, around this and knock out each piece as we go. So we're going to define a function. And the way we do that in JavaScript, we do the full word function. And we're going to call it in camel case, which is lowercase first word, second word connected with no spaces, no markings of any kind, capitalized. So we're going to do confirm, spelled correctly, then capital delete. And this is going to take in event. And this looks very similar to a Python function. You'll look, it's got these parentheses and all that. But then it's going to have curly brackets, opening and closing curly brackets. So I'm going to put this all the way down around the notes that I made because each of these steps that I defined are going to be a part of this function. Right? So we're going to make this function, and each of these steps is going to be a part of it. So all of our function is going to be inside of here. And again, this indentation, unlike Python, does not matter for JavaScript. It does not care. That's human readability is why I moved that over. But these curly brackets are really important. Have to be open and closing curly brackets for your function to work. So let's start by stopping the default behavior. This is where JavaScript comes in handy because it is built for the web. This event is a built-in thing. It could be anything. It could be a touch on a touch screen, a key press, a mouse click. In our case, it could be a mouse click. But events, any interaction for the user, saying something to a microphone maybe could be an event. What we're going to do is we're going to grab that event as our first step. So we're going to do just in our case, it's stopping the default behavior, right? So we're going to say event dot prevent default, which is a conveniently pre-built JavaScript thing. We're going to end it with a semicolon, also important in JavaScript. Cool. So now we've prevented the default by using this dot notation, which is also very frequent in JavaScript. And now we need to confirm with the user. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use in if statement and check if a condition is met. We're going to use a built-in function from JavaScript of confirm, and we're going to see if that condition has been confirmed. So we're going to use if, just like in Python was, except this time we have to put our condition inside parentheses. We're going to use built-in confirm, another set of parentheses, and we can put in a string. So this built-in confirm is, again, this is the window, the little pop-up that's going to pop up at the top of the browser that says, hey, is that what you want to do? It's going to expect a string for whatever comment you want to put in there, whatever message you want to send to the user. And so for our case, since we know we're deleting tasks, we can say, delete task with question mark. Are you sure you want to delete the task? What are you thinking? Whatever you want to put, that's totally fine. Any string is acceptable. Should be descriptive for your user. But now the other piece for once we do this if statement in JavaScript, in Python it was a colon. In JavaScript is once again curly brackets. So I'm going to do opening curly brackets, and I'm going to put closing here. So inside of our outer function curly brackets is our if statement curly brackets, because this is what we're going to do if the behavior, if it was confirmed. What are we doing now is what this piece of code is going to do. If it's not confirmed, it's just going to move on and we don't have to do the other case. But what we want to do here is the default behavior. So we want to take the window location. The window is the whole area that we're looking at. It's often referred to as the window in these things. The location of that window, the href of that, as we've used several times, we want it to be the default, what it was before. We want it to go and do that thing. Right? So we're going to use those terms pretty explicitly. Say window dot, so this is a function of the actual window that we're going to use, dot location, so that's going to be the place that it's going to be, dot href. And we're going to set that with an equal sign. So window.location.href, all lowercase, all connected, no spaces, is, using the equal sign, the event.target, which target's a handy thing to know. You can use that to, like, when you hit an A tag, an anchor tag, to open up in a different window or in a different tab. Target is the attribute you use to set that. But in this case, the target is going to be the href of the event. So what we've done here is we've said the event itself initially had a target href. But we prevented its default behavior, and we confirmed with the user that they actually wanted this thing to go send our window to that thing. And now that we've confirmed it, go for it. Make the window this target href. So now we've done that. We've done the 3 steps that we sketched out in our code. And now if you look at this, the reason I started with comments is, first of all, it's pretty common practice. It's a good way to do it. You can make a to-do list on your items while you're brainstorming how to do it without actually writing any code and holding yourself to that expectation of, oh man, how do I write the code? How do I remember what it is? Don't worry about it. Write it in comments. But then if you look at these, this right here isn't really adding any value to us anymore. It says stop the default behavior. This says prevent default behavior, prevent default. It's the same thing. So if you read the JavaScript, you don't need this. And that's the idea with comments, is they may be useful, but you want to minimize how many you have in your code ultimately, because your code should be written to the point that you can read it and understand what's happening. So all these comments become superfluous once we actually write the code. So I'm going to remove these, and we should be able to follow the logic top to bottom on this function like we did before, reading the code that's written there. So this is our first function. This is the first thing that we need to do for our overall interaction for our user. We have to somehow confirm with them once they press the button that they wanted to do the thing that they pressed, yes or no. If they say yes, we do the thing. So the next step that we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to find out on our page, our HTML page, where the buttons are and which buttons are delete buttons, and how do we know? So there's a 2-step process for that. So first we have to collect, I'm going to do this as a comment again. So collect all the buttons into some sort of collection, some sort of grouping. And then we're going to go through those things and check each one to see if it's to see if it's a delete button. Right? So we're going to label it somehow as delete, and then we're going to see which ones are delete buttons and find out if they're pressed, right? And if it was pressed, that's the last piece we need to do. If it's a delete button, if it is, if yes, has it been pressed? Right? So these are the steps that we're going to figure out, right? So we're going to collect all the buttons that we have on our page, because as you know, we write our buttons right here by defining them. So there could be several. We don't want them all to be delete buttons. So we're going to grab all of them. We're going to look through them, see which ones are delete buttons. And then we're going to see if those delete buttons have been pressed. Cool. So let's collect the buttons. We'll do this with a variable. And in Python, we just wrote the name of the variable. In JavaScript, we have to use var, V-A-R. So reserved word for variable means variable. And then we use the name. And this, again, is camel case by convention. So we're going to do delete buttons because it's a group. It's a collection. And then I'm going to say this is equal to document, which is our HTML document. So not the window, but the document. The file itself is going to read the document. And then we're going to use this query, capital selector, capital all. Again, camel case, query selector all. This is a very common way to grab everything off of a page that meets a criteria. So in this set of parentheses, I'm going to pass a string. It says what we want to look for. Now, this is where I'm going to give it a class name from CSS. So we're going to use dot to indicate a class, and we'll come up with a custom class name called button-delete. So we're going to follow the button convention of BTN, but we're going to call it our delete button so that we can label any button we like with this class, and we'll store them at this point there, right? Cool. So this is where we did the checking for delete. So now we've done this step as well. We take that out, and we collected the buttons. So we did that in 2. So now we got to figure out, has it been pressed? So we got to loop through each of these and have a look to see if they're pressed. Now, who remembers the ways of looping things through things that we talked about, and which of those do you think might be useful here as a general process without thinking about the syntax to how we might write it in JavaScript?
Well, if you know the buttons, would you put the buttons into a list and go through the list?
Very good. That's what this step is doing. That's exactly what this is doing. So this right here is some sort of what we call iterable. Yes, a for loop. Like so, very good. So what we have done Both Michaels, good answers. So the first thing we've done here on line 31 for me is we've stacked in the delete buttons, which is some sort of iterable. Doesn't matter what kind in JavaScript. We're not going to get to that level of knowing JavaScript. Makes no difference at this point. And we're going to use a for loop to loop through those things and see if they've been pressed. And if they have, execute our function, our confirm delete function. So let's do that. So we're going to do the for loop in JavaScript is we're going to take this right here, this object where we've stored all of our delete buttons. So I'm just going to copy that delete buttons object, paste it down here, use dot notation. So delete, capital buttons, all one word, dot, and then for each. Each is capitalized. Now, this is where it gets fun and interesting with JavaScript. This is where JavaScript does some really, kind of fun stuff. It's great. It's really not that complex, though. So this is in the for loop. This is the way the for loop is executed. So for each thing in this delete button is how this reads. So like delete buttons. So for each item in delete buttons, we're going to do whatever is in here. And in here, if we want it to do a thing, we're going to give it a function. But we don't have to name that function anything. We can use what's called an anonymous function. So just the word function and opening, closing, parentheses. So we can have inputs. Same place for inputs like always. And we're going to put in some kind of input. This is a variable name is button, though, because we are going to do something with basically each button in delete buttons. So this is, if you think about the Python syntax we used, we would write this in Python as for button in delete buttons. In JavaScript, we write it as delete buttons dot for each function button. But it's the same thing. It's a for loop looking for these things. So since it's a function, though, we have to add curly brackets. So before our last parentheses, set of curly brackets. I'm going to hit enter on this, and we're going to put our stuff inside on what we do. So what we're going to do to each button, we're going to take each button, right? So each button that we have passed to our function, because each button out of our buttons list, we're going to do button.add event capital listener capital listener. So all camel case again, lowercase add, uppercase event, uppercase listener, all one word. And this is going to look for a certain event. In our case, a click. You can set this to all kinds of different events. We're going to do this just a click, and you literally just pass the string click, lowercase, comma, and then the name of some function to call once it's clicked. And so we're going to do our confirm delete function from above. And that's it. Now we have our JavaScript. And I'm going to close these off, all these pieces, each line that's done, the end of each line. And, bad habit for not being a JavaScript developer. I forget these little semicolons at the end of each part of this. You should remember to put those in. It is good to have. It does expect them. But the jury's out on how much that's going to matter. It kind of depends on what's read when. It may or may not break your stuff. All right, so let's try to get this last piece done. What do we need to do now? This is the last JavaScript we need to write. What step do we need to take now, though? Just look at the logic of this. What do we need to do to make this work as the last step? We've defined all the things, and we've told it what to do. Where do we need to do now? Anybody intuitively know what we need to do?
You need to do a verification process.
Got to test it, right? And to test it, what are we going to have to do? We're going to have to add it to something we have and run it, right? So let's take this class, this button.delete class, and let's put it on something. We don't have it called anywhere. So I'm just going to put it up here in my about button. So I'm going to do btn-delete, and I'm going to save this, and I'm going to reload the server side. Hopefully this works. Otherwise, I'll be very upset. All right, cool. So now we have not broken it yet. We have our about button here. And if I hit about, it worked on my side. It says Hired Labs, the name of my domain says, and then that string that I pass it. So delete task with question mark, and then OK or cancel. So if I hit cancel, that's the no, I don't want to confirm that. And let's see what happens. It should just take me right back here to the home page. It does. So if I hit about again, it pops up again with, hey, you shouldn't want to do that. If I hit OK, it executes. So that is how JavaScript works, and where it fits into a web application. It can be written directly in your HTML and executed just like that, called through classes. Any general questions about that? Oh, your Giphy stop coming out? Interesting, because those should be on two different pages. Because the work we were just doing with this should have all been in your base.html, and the Giphy should be in your index.html. So there shouldn't have been any conflict there. But here, let me get this out of your
I think
actual.
I think I saw something.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Save this. Then refresh because I made a change. All right. Any other questions? Anyway, we've got about 15-ish minutes, and I want to do similar to what we did last time, where we wrote it here in the HTML, and then we moved with the CSS out to a separate file. I want to do that with the script file as well here at the last few minutes just to show where it goes structurally. But before I do, I want to, again, make sure that we're at least quasi-clear on what we've done up to now, and if anybody's really stuck and has a question, I'll make sure we got time for it. Anybody in that boat?
you just roll up a little bit. It was btn space btn dot delete, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I missed something then. Okay.
Okay. You want me to help you debug? We got time. We can hop in and look because to switching over to a different file should not take that long. So
If you want to jump in,
yeah, because I want to get this working for you. Because if it doesn't work moving over to the other file, I want it at least working like this. So I'll hop over in yours. Let's have a look. Boom. All right. So first, I'm going to open your web app and kind of see what happens. All right. Okay. Now, another thing I actually kind of forgot to mention is that because we're using JavaScript, it may be the case that like your browser might block it or something. I don't think that's the case for me, but this right here in our console, I did inspect again and I went over to console, and this will help show us errors as well, right? So it says uncaught reference error, delete button is not defined. So I have a feeling that your error, Michael, is somewhere in this pluralization that you saved in delete buttons with an S like I did, but then you referenced it as delete button without an S. Let's go have a look.
oh, yeah, I think it's
You see what I'm saying?
line 38. I call it delete buttons.
Yeah. So if we go to wait, what am I doing? Because we should be in templates, base.html.
I just moved it
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
38.
On line 40, it's you have a singular, and then on line 30 you have a plural. So that's the issue for there.
I'll get rid of the S. I should be fine.
Yeah. Either one, yeah, it's just got to match. And that again, that plural singular thing is just a constant because sometimes it logically makes sense to have it as plural versus singular, and then you'll forget to write the s later. So it's just got to match. And then let me know if that worked. That work?
Yes. How about that?
Excellent, 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 excellent. All right, cool.
Great.
So in the last 10-ish, 11 minutes, if I can stop tripping over my own tongue. Let's move this over into a separate file like we, again, typically will do in any project because it'll just get too big to have all your script stuff in your HTML files. We want to keep this stuff as clean as possible, separate concerns, have stuff separate where we can. And once again, as a reminder, you could grab Bootstrap's JavaScript and not even write any direct JavaScript if you don't want to, or some other framework's JavaScript. Keep in mind all the frameworks of JavaScript and CSS. So we're going to go back to our Bash console. We're gonna do this. I'm gonna try to do this all in here, and hopefully y'all stick with me. I've done this in past classes in the GUI, but I really don't like it like that. I want to do it. I want to do it in here. This is I think much better practice all the way around. So, if you're not comfortable creating files and directories and stuff in your console, I encourage you to keep trying. But if you want to do this in your GUI, you absolutely can. Just make sure that you make the right directories in the right order. We'll go through it fairly slowly to make sure we get them right. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna have to make a directory, and I'm gonna start again by showing our tree structure. So we're going to have to make a static directory at our application level. So each application, as you grow a project, applications will have, or projects will have several applications. Each application will have its own set of static files. There'll be their own scripts, there'll be their own styles, all that sort of stuff will be in there. Their own templates and stuff. We'll make templates next week for this to-do application. And in past iterations of this class, I didn't talk about this level of depth that we're going to go through now because I didn't want to confuse people, but I think it's important because this could cause problems before if you don't do what we're about to do. But it might feel confusing because there's some redundancy. So if you're like, wait, why did we just do this weird layer of depth? Definitely ask me. But so what we're going to do is a standard way of doing this, and hopefully by the end it's clear why. But as a precursor explanation, or I guess the upfront explanation, we're going to add in our to-do directory a static directory. Inside of that directory, we're going to make another to-do directory that's referencing this application. And then inside of that, we'll make a scripts directory. And inside of that, we will make our confirm delete.js file and move our JavaScript into that. We'll talk about why that redundancy is, but again, it is so that we don't have conflicts with other applications, that we keep the scripts that are for this actual thing and the static files that are for this application alone in a separate directory once it is brought into main static with collect static. And it doesn't have any naming conflicts with other files and other directories and other packages, other applications, other things you might be importing into your project. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to set this up in the Django way for our static directories, which is arguably annoying, but let's do it. All right, so I'm going to clear this up, and I'm going to, this is a pretty long command, but I'm still stay zoomed in. So if it gets a little wonky, just ask and we'll make it right. So we'll start with making directory. So mkdir, and we're gonna make several directories in one shot. So we can separate each directory we want to make with a space and just write the directory out we want to make. So we could do full on, you know, the tilde slash my site, but we're in tilde slash my site. So I'm not going to write that on each one of these. I'm just going to make the directory I want to make. So I'm going to do a to do, and that already exists. So I hit tab to make sure that it completes and it's already there. So I'm going to make a to do. I'm going to make a static directory. And then I'm going to make a to do static. And you'll notice if you hit tab on static, it won't complete because that directory hasn't been made yet. This first call hasn't been called yet. I haven't hit enter yet, right? So to do, you can hit tab complete, static, you cannot. So make sure you spell it right. So to do static is the second directory we want to make. Oh, I'm sorry. To do static to do is the second directory we want to make. So we make one to do static. This again, where it gets confusing. Then we make one to do static to do. All right. Now inside of that directory, we're going to make to do static, no spaces. It's just moving down to a new line. Don't hit enter yet. This is still one line. And inside of that inner to do, we're going to make a scripts directory. And then while I'm here, there's space and then 2 ampersands. And this is, again, Linux bash way of doing things where the call before the ampersand is called and then another command is called. I'm going to use touch to make a file in that directory all in one shot. So the ultimate directory is going to be to do static to do scripts slash confirm dash delete, again down another line .js. This is all one line though. It's a lot of code, but it's one line. And so again, if you're following your GUI, you just need to make a directory inside of your top level or inside of your to-do app level directory that's called static. Then inside of that static directory, make a directory called to-do. Then inside of that to-do directory, make a directory called static. I'm sorry, make a directory called scripts. Then inside of that, make confirm delete.js. We'll go back through that in a second. I'm going to hit enter so we have all those things. And now if we go back to our actual thing, again, you could do this in the GUI directly, but in our to-do, right, we got static, to-do, scripts, confirm delete.js. So there's the thing that we need. And I'm going to grab out of my template. So I open a new tab, the top level, and get templates. And again, you do this in V if you like, but I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to take it out of my base.html. I'm going to take all that JavaScript that I wrote, right? Everything in between the script tags, but not the script tags themselves. Those are HTML. We're going to leave those here. So I'm going to cut those out by doing Control X. We don't need them here anymore. I'm going to take it out entirely. So my script tag is now empty, but I'm going to leave the script tag because we need it, but there's nothing in it. So now it's just an empty script tag. We're going to need it here, but we don't, not right now. All right, so I'm going to go back to my confirm delete. I'm going to save this. Go back to my confirm delete.js, and I'll paste it in here. And again, you can fix this spacing, selecting everything using the left square bracket, move everything over for human readability. Then we're going to save this. We'll go back to our base.html, right? So again, so we just made a my site to do static to do scripts confirm-delete.js. And now our last piece to connect these is a reference in our base.html, similar to what we did with our style sheet. We have to do a lot of these same things, except we're going to do it in the script tag because this is how we connect them. So let's do that. All right, so the first thing we're going to do with that is we're going to say what type we have. And again, this is an attribute of the opening tag. So it's not inside where the script was that we wrote the JavaScript. It's inside the HTML tag. We're going to add attributes. The first one's going to be type. We're going to set it to the string text slash JavaScript. And then we're going to say src for source. And this is going to be the reference to our file that we just made. So we're going to use Django again for this to reference it because this is what the backend framework is good for. So we need curly brackets, percentage sign, and I'm going to close it up with percentage sign, curly brackets. And in between those, where the Django is going to be, I'm going to use static, which if you recall, we loaded up here on line 2 to load our static directory. And this is a reference up to the main static directory in our overall project structure, right? That's what this is referencing. This is saying, okay, up to that main static, what follows that is going to be a string with single quotation marks. And we're going to say this is in the to-do, so slash to-do slash scripts slash confirm dash delete dot JS. So the full path of everything beneath the static directory, right? So in our bash console, remember everything that's beneath this static directory is to do scripts confirm delete JS. That's the full path that we need to include here in our source. So I'm going to save that. And then I'm going to do a collect static to make sure that we have this file, our confirm delete, moved into our static main. And again, let's clear this up and run tree again, just to have a look before and after our collect static call. So we have the two differences and we're coming up on time. So here's the static that we made, our static directory inside of the to-do application. We don't have anything in static main to that effect. So let's run collect static and get it there. So my top level root directory, I'm gonna run Python. Let me clear this up, sorry, clear. I'm gonna run Python 3 manage.py collect static, hit enter. And it says, are you sure you want to override all the files in your static main directory? And we're going to say yes, the full word yes. It said one static file copied, which hopefully was our JS file, and 128 files unmodified. So that should be the 127 that come with Django plus our CSS file. Make it clear. That should be since it was refactoring. Well, I'm going to go, actually, before I reload there, I'm going to reload on this side. Even though I'm not sure it's necessary, it's always a good habit to make sure that you reload server-side code before you try to run any changes you made to make sure that your server has the most up-to-date code. Then I'll refresh in the browser. Should be the case when I hit about, home. It did not load. It did not work. So we broke. We're going to have to figure out why we broke. Oh, well, there we go. So failed to load confirmed delete.js. So I misspelled delete. let's let's not misspell that in the name of our thing. So it's confirm delete, not confirm delete. That'll be helpful. And I found that by opening up inspect and looking at my console, and I see this error log. It says failed to load this, and we'll see if that works here. If it solves both these problems. Hopefully it does. All right, so now I fixed my misspelling on that. I'm gonna reload the server side, and hopefully right at the time this actually works. And there it is. Let me get this thing out of the way. I'll cancel this. All right, so now we got our home and our about buttons. When I hit the about button, I get the delete task confirmation. If I hit OK, it takes me to the about page. If I hit home, it takes me home. Likewise, on the about page, it'll still do the same things. Cancel works, keeps me where I'm at. So now we moved it out. I know we're a minute over. Was anybody able to do that and refactor it into the separate JavaScript? Into our...
I got an error. It said that cannot create directory to do / static file exists. So I copied from the notes on that you handed out and put that string right in, and it still blew up. So
Uh-oh. All right, you want to hop in and have a look?
if you want, sure.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. All right.
That's the code I'm looking. That's the string that we created in class.
Yeah. Okay. So let's have a see. So I'm gonna look in your console.
Yeah, the bottom one.
Bottom one. All right. Make sure to do static, to do static, to do static, to do scripts, and touch to do static, to do scripts, confirm. Trace delete. Static file exists. Okay. So here, I'm gonna try something real quick if you don't mind.
Sure.
I'm just gonna see. Actually, do you have? You do. All right. I'm gonna run this and see what you got. So you've got to do static, to do scripts. Yeah, that looks good. Oh, you didn't get JS covered in your ignore, but that's okay. Um, so yeah, you got to do static and then to do and then scripts. So that's probably why you already have it. It's already made.
When you go to files,
Yeah.
you bring up what is it? Templates and to do.
hmm
Didn't show anything.
Oh, so we go. Let's see, my site to do. Yeah, static right here. Static
Yeah, click on it.
to do scripts. Yeah, you just have to make your confirm delete file in here. You got the directory to do static to do scripts.
Well, I guess I missed a step.
Yeah, I think so. And we can look back in the console and see where it was, but yeah, I think it was you made something where it made all these directories, but then didn't make the file. And so then when you try to run the full thing again out of the documentation, you just need that part after the double ampersands to make the file, or you can just make it in here. Just do confirm
Okay.
dash delete.js and then copy and paste that stuff over.
And that's where the video helps.
Yeah, definitely,
Go
definitely.
through it.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, anybody else got any quick questions? I know we're a few minutes over, but anybody else questions conceptually, even if you didn't get your hands on it today, you're just watching and watch the videos later in practice. Questions about what we covered, why we did it the way we did it, how this works, ultimately why we do the collect static to put it into one directory. That all roughly making sense. All right. Again, I appreciate all your time and attention. Sorry for going a little bit over, but keep practicing and reach out with questions. I'm happy to sit down between classes. You got plenty of time between now and next week, which we're going to start digging into back-end development and make this app actually do some stuff. So we'll put our app on here. This is just the website front end. So now we get to the stuff that I enjoy, back end. But if nothing else, then have a great weekend, and I'll see you all Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.